Now we're going to solve equations that have multiply and divide in them. And again, multiply and divide undo each other. So you find your variable and ask yourself, what's being done to the variable, and then you want to undo it. So what's the opposite of what's being done to the variable? And then we have to know all our multiply and divide rules. So in this first problem, we find our x and say, what's the opposite of multiply by 5? Divide by 5. And this is really an important way to show it. I do want you to put it underneath like this, because if you use the division sign, you really have to write the problem over again, because you can't just put it out in front. You get x equals 7 and we're done. So I think you might find these a little easier maybe than yesterday's. What's the opposite of multiply by negative 6? Divide by negative 6. So make sure you divide by the negative. So again, these cancel. 60 divided by 6 is 10. The signs are different, so it would be negative. So again, make sure you have your rational number sheet in front of you. So if you're not sure of the rules, you can look it up and use the correct rule, because it's very important that we get the signs right. Now, what's being done to the variable? Well, this bar means divide, so it's being divided by 7, so the opposite of divide by 7 is multiply. I like to put the 7 out to the side, and I'll show you why in a minute. So it's really like 7 over 1, so the 7's cancel, and I get 77. I know some of you probably before have put it underneath, but when you put it underneath, to me, that looks like that's going to become a 49, and it's not. So that's why I don't like that way. So I prefer, please, if you would write it out to the side. Again, find your variable. It's being divided by 30, so the opposite of divide by 30 would be multiply by 30. Here the 30's cancel, leaving you x. Think of this as 30 over 1 and do some canceling. 10 goes into 10 once, into 33 times, and you're left with 21. So x equals 21. You can also check these just like we said before. This might be an easier one to check. What is, if you put a 77 in here, what is 77 for y? What is 77 divided by 7? It's 11. So you can check these just like we talked about in addition. And again, a lot of you have trouble with fractions. Well, this problem I would change my fractions into improper fractions. So remember how we did that? 4 times 2 is 8 right here. Plus 1 would be 9 over 4g. And this one would be 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 would be 3 over 2. Now there's two ways to do this. The opposite of multiply by 9/4 is divide by 9/4. But remember our rule for dividing is to multiply by the reciprocal. So I like to go right to that step. And the reciprocal then of 9/4 is going to be 4/9. So I'm going to multiply by 4/9. In other words, you want something to cancel here. So ask yourself maybe what's going to cancel with 9/4. So these both cancel, leaving us g. And over here we can do some canceling. 2 goes into 2 once, into 4 twice. 3 goes into 3 once, into 9 3 times. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3, so our answer is g equals 2/3. So change them to improper fractions first, and you can ask yourself what's the opposite of multiply? Divide, and then remember divide, you multiply by the reciprocal. So again, your rule sheet should have those rules for you. In doing a word problem, we have to do the very same thing we did yesterday. Define your variable, write an equation, and solve it. So negative 14 times the number equals 224. Find the number. We don't know the number, so again, let your variable represent that. Just stands for some number or a number. Negative 14 times a number, that would be negative 14x, is equal to 224. So that's our equation. Now we need to solve that. So the opposite of multiply by negative 14 would be divide by negative 14. And here's probably an example when we're dividing by a 2-digit number. I probably wouldn't be upset if you used a calculator. Signs are different, so it's going to be negative. And then if you do that on the calculator, you're going to get 16. So that would be your answer, x equal negative 16. But make sure you define your variable or it's going to be wrong to start with.